dividend discount model. Let's write down a sentence. Value of a stock is present value of all future cash flows. Now, since we are using dividend discount model, in bracket, the future cash flows would be dividends and terminal value, which means some year you will sell your stock 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So whatever value you would get after selling your stock, we call that as terminal value. So value of stock is present value of all future cash flow, dividends and terminal value discounted at appropriate rate of return. Discounted at appropriate rate of return. In bracket you would say required return on equity. So one of the ways of calculating that is CAPM. So the cost of equity that we get from CAPM, that would be used to discount all the present value of future cash flows. Are we doing fine? So let's start with example number 1. Expected dividend in year 1 is equal to 30. Expected stock price in year 1 is 100. Cost of common equity is 15%. Find out value of this stock. So how will you do it? You will simply build a timeline. This is time 0, this is time 1. We are looking at receiving two cash flows here. One, we are going to receive a dividend of 30 and we will sell the stock and that would get us a cash flow of 100. So total cash flow that's coming to us 1 year from now is 130. And this cash flow we have to discount backwards at the rate of 15%. So second clear TVM, 130 future value, 15 IY, 1N, compute present value, 1, 1, 3, 113. So then this is the value of the stock as per dividend discount model. Are you fine with this? The question Rahul is asking, are we assuming this 100? So when I learned this topic, I always used to wonder that somehow the questions are trying to fool us. If they know the market price 1 year from now, in the first place, how do they know it? And if they know it 1 year from now, why can't they know it today? Isn't it? And then why is this topic really required? So keep this on hold for some time. You'll understand this as I finish the session. Question number 2 or example number 2. Perpetual expected dividend is 20. Cost of common equity is 10%. Again, the logic is same. Value of a stock is present value of all future dividends or cash flows. In this case, we have a perpetuity and we know the formula for perpetuity. Value at time 0 is equal to 20 divided by 10%. The valuation of this stock would be 200. Are we doing fine? Example number 3. Dividend at time 0 is equal to 20. Growth rate from year 1 to 3 is 10%. 4 to 5 is 5%. Expected stock price in year 5 is 200. Cost of common equity 10%. Find out value of this stock. Alright, let's do it together. I'm building a timeline here. What we have to do is just plot the cash flows at the relevant place. D020, where should I write this? At time 0. Now see that sentence carefully. Value of a stock is present value of future cash flow. Present value of future cash flow. Is D0 future cash flow? No, it is what we have already received. And if you've already received that, This is not a relevant metric for decision making. Okay, which means this 20 will not be considered as a part of cash flow. However, this 20 will help us understand what would be the cash flow in year 1. So do this. 20 into 1.1. 24, then 22 into 1.1 would be 24.2. 24.2 into 1.1, 26.62 into 1.05, 27.95, and into 1.05, 29.34. So these are the dividends that we are looking at for the next 5 years. Plus, in year 5, will we have any other cash flow? 200, because we will sell the stock and we will receive 200 in year 5. And then these 5 cash flows you have to discount backwards at what rate? 10%, which is your cost of equity. So press the cash flow button of your calculator. Can we solve this using TVM row? We cannot. We cannot easily, because we will have to discount the cash flows 5 times backwards and then add them up, which will be time consuming. So if it's not an annuity, the fastest way is cash flow function. So press the cash flow button, then say second clear work. What should be cash flow 0? Nothing. Cash flow 0 is 0. Come on to cash flow 1. How much? 22. So in this fashion, insert all the 5 cash flow. Year 5 cash flow would be a total of these 2, which would be 229.34. And then press the NPV button. Say I is equal to 10% and then compute NPV. Any questions? Have you understood what's happening? Do you want me to repeat this again? Let's do one more example. Now example number 4. Let's give this a 5 star. Example 4 would be split into 2 parts. First part, perpetual dividend. Perpetual dividend is 10, cost of common equity 10%. What should be the value of stock? It would be 100. So we will simply say the cash flow that we are expecting to receive 10 divided by the discount rate 10%, valuation of the stock is 100. Now the second part, which is linked to the first question, that dividend of time 0 was 10, cost of common equity is 10%, and perpetual growth rate. Okay, the important word to be focused on this is the word perpetual. So I want you to learn to distinguish between just the growth rate and perpetual growth rate. So what perpetual means is that this company has reached a very mature type of phase in the industry where every year it will keep on growing at the rate of 10%. No, sorry, in this case I want to keep that growth rate as 5%. So which means we are looking at the growth rate of dividend at the rate of 5% forever till infinity. So how do you value the stock in these cases? Observe the formula carefully. Value of stock at time 0 is equal to dividend of time 1 divided by cost of common equity minus the G, and this G is always the perpetual rate. It is never growth rate for 1 year or 2 year. It is a growth rate that will remain forever. So this formula is referred to as the Gordon growth formula. Now, does the question provide us with D1? No. But D1 can be calculated as D0 into 1 plus G, because we are expecting dividend to grow at G every year, divided by KCE minus G. Have you written down the formula? Now this formula you can modify the way you like. For example, if the perpetual growth is starting from year 6, that means the first perpetual dividend we are going to get when? In year 6. Isn't it? Year 6 onwards the perpetual growth started. So if you make D6 in the numerator, you would get value of year 5. If the perpetual growth is starting in year 10, then you will get value of stock at year 9. If the perpetual growth is starting in year 100, then you would get value of stock at year 99. And this is a trick that in the subsequent questions we would be given normal growth rates, and starting in some year we would be given perpetual growth rate. Once we are given a perpetual growth rate, we can find out the value of stock a year before that using this formula, and then apply the same dividend discount model that we've been applying so far. Are we fine? So let's solve this particular question now. So this is value at time 0 divided by dividend of year 1. So dividend of year 0 is 10. 10 into 1.05 would be 10.5, and 10.5 divided by 10 minus 5%, which is 5%. Valuation of the stock would be 210. And just observe the difference now. The only difference between this question number 1 and question number 2 was growth rate of 5%, but the valuation of the stock has almost doubled. Agree? And it makes sense because the first scenario here, in this scenario, there is no growth. So you would only get 10 as the cash flow every year, whereas in the second case, your dividend will keep on growing forever. So 10 will become 10.5, then it will grow by 5%, then 5%, and it will keep on growing forever. And that excess growth, in a way, is adding how much? 110 to the valuation of stock. Are we doing okay here?